Hello, my name's Kingston, and today I'll be talking about the global conflict that is Israel-Palestine. And sorry if the voice quality is weird. Now first, where is Israel? Well, it's located in between Asia and Africa, and it's next to Egypt. Now, I will tell you about the history of Israel and Palestine, starting from the early 1900s. In the beginning, Israel was religiously diverse, consisting of mainly Muslims, Christians, and a few Jews. Some people thought to themselves to be Palestinians instead of being an Israeli. Israel was part of the Ottoman Empire, but when it fell to Britain, it was under British rule. Over time, more Jewish people arrived to Israel. When Jewish immigration was limited by Britain, the Jewish people began to resist British rule. In the coming years, many acts of terrorism were caused on both sides. In the coming years, there was a plan to divide the land equally so that Israelis and Palestinians would have a place to stay, with Jerusalem being an international zone. The Jewish people agreed to it, but the Palestinians didn't think of it as a good plan and thought of it as just them trying to steal their land. Despite this, the plan still went through and the new state of Israel was formed. Soon after that, the Palestinians started a war against the Israelis. It was a fierce battle, but the new state of Israel came out on top. But when they won, a lot of the land that had been declared Palestinian was now under the rule of Israel. Palestinians only had control over Gaza and most of the West Bank. This caused many Palestinians to be expelled from their homes and create a massive refugee population. Later on, in 1967, Israel and the neighboring Arab states fought another war. This war also came up in Israel's favor, and they seized all of Palestine. They also took the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt and the Golan Heights from Syria. In the 1960s, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed, and they fought against Israel and took back the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestinian Liberation Organization said they would agree to splitting the land equally, but nothing happened and the conflict kept going on. Some settlers moved into the West Bank, even though they were Israeli and the land was Palestinian, whether the Palestinians liked it or not. Along with the settlers, many soldiers moved into the border as well to protect them. This split up a bunch of Palestinian communities. In the 1980s, there was the first Intifada, the Arabic word for uprising. It started with just protests, but then became very violent. Many lives were lost in the first Intifada. Around this time, things were changing in Gaza. There was a new extremist group called Hamas. They split off from the PLO. Hamas was very violent and committed many acts of terrorism against Israel. In the 2000s, there was the second Intifada that was way more violent than the first one. After the second Intifada, Israel built walls around the West Bank to contain the problem instead of solve it. This wraps up the history. You may be wondering why I chose this conflict. I chose this conflict because it's pretty well known, and not many people know why it's happening. Why this is a problem. Well, this conflict is unpredictable, and many things may happen. Maybe a third Intifada, or Hamas does something extreme. We know that they would do anything for this land, and unless the other side collapses or a peace treaty is formed, this will keep going on. Many people's lives are at stake. Though we can't do anything about this presentation was to raise awareness about the situation. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching.